Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Today, we continue with a horror tale. And we continue with our buddy Steven in Danse Macabre. Good old Steve. And we continue with Tales of the Tarot. In fact, we finished Tales of the Tarot today. Of course, Tales of the Tarot involve certain archetypes, tropes, or conventions in which the stories will conform to an extent. The tarot cards, of course, the thing without a name, the vampire, the werewolf, and the ghost or the bad place. We are on the fourth tarot card, the ghost, the bad place. And Stephen King isn't really sure on this one. Of course, The Thing Without a Name was typified by Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. The vampire was typified by Dracula by Bram Stoker. The werewolf was typified by The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And the ghost, earlier, Stephen King said it's probably typified by, or you could say it's typified by Turn of the Screw by James, but the ghost is the Mississippi of the horror field. It is the source, the big one, and it is, and it hits you in ways that, in more primal ways, which is why I think the true card is the bad place, where Stephen King says the true card is the ghost. And he thinks the bad place oftentimes is the werewolf. And I think the ghost is oftentimes the werewolf. The same thing can be said about the ghost. However, we'll of course get into all that. Let's say what Stephen King says before I say why I disagree with it. I have my hot water. This is very hot water. I'm just gonna... Oh, it's very hot today. Alright, so we're gonna start with how Stephen King starts. He starts the section not in the Tarot, Tales of the Tarot section. He starts it actually in horror fiction. That's where he starts. This is after he talks about radio, after he talks about movies, and he starts talking about fiction, and then he brings in the card of the ghost, which is weird. So he starts on 282 when everything else was way back in... Oh, goodness, how far back are we talking about? Under 100. Yeah, Tales of the Werewolf will go down till 97, and then we start back on Tales of the Ghost for 292. So, a bit of a switch, and he's very not sure about which part of it is. He calls the ghost the card, the tarot card, and he calls the bad place the archetype, which were sort of interchangeable. It's confusing. We're going to talk about what he says. Let's start with ghosts without the bad place. Free-floating ghosts, not an unanchored ghost, which I always think doesn't work as well, which I'll of course go into, as I said again. And as I'll say many, many times, ghosts are the card that freaks me out. Last time we talked about werewolves, and those are the ones I like most. This time we talk about ghosts. These are the ones that freak me out most. So this is going to be... I'm not going to sleep tonight, I have a feeling. So ghosts free-floating. Peter Straub's Julia and Peter Straub's Ghost Story is the ones he talks about as the epitome ghost stories, or the ones he wants to talk about as ghost stories, and these are the ones that don't have anchored ghosts. The ghost in Julia, which is Julia is also the main character's name, sort of, is probably the ghost of Julia's daughter, Kate, who died with a botched tracheotomy when she was choking on her food and the mom slit her throat open. The ghost appears in other places, actually even hanging out with kids. Not appearing like the daughter, just another kid, but sort of weird looking and obscure and making the kids nervous. And kids playing in the sandbox. Julia goes over and checks the sandbox afterwards, and she finds a bloody knife and a desiccated turtle. Like a turtle that's had a botched tracheotomy performed on it. And then in Ghost Story, same sort of deal. The little girl, Angie? I'm almost positive it's Angie. Angie Mall goes on a road trip with the main character. Road trip for a ghost? That's kind of weird. Yeah, but it is. A little closer to Stephen King's home would be came out far after when Stephen King wrote this book, was Joe Hill's Heart-Shaped Box. And as you can see on the here, sooner or later the dead catch up. That's backwards. Sooner or later the dead catch up. I'm doing this on screen, so I can't read it as well. I read everything backwards. Which is a guy trying to outrun a ghost who's chasing him across country. Or at least from New Hampshire to Florida to Louisiana, was it? Oh, it's been so long since I've read it. I don't have a lot of ghost books in my house, so there's going to be less of these that I'm going to show you. This is pretty much the only ghost book I have, because ghosts freak me out a lot. I don't have ghost movies because ghosts freak me out a lot. Outside of, one or two. And I haven't read Peter Straub because Peter Straub's the king of ghost stories. I've read some Peter Straub short stories, but I haven't read these two explained by King. And they're move around ghosts too, so I don't know. I don't know if they work. I read The Hunger by Straub, or They Feed, or something along those lines, which is very odd. Food porny ghostness that I don't know, so weird. Anyway, Julia finds the ghost, talks to a black girl, Mona, about the ghost, or the weird little girl, and when she asks the little girl's name, the girl says Julia back to her. And sort of later on in Ghost Story, there's the same sort of thing as the ghost, or a suspect ghost, makes the implication that the main character is the ghost, which makes it think that it's werewolf or internal evil. Apollonian Dionysian conflict, of course, that's throughout all horror, but internalized. I don't know. It's interesting. Ghost Story is the mix all. How many ghost tropes can we get into one book? Is as Peter Straub tries to do it. Ghosts, we understand the concept of ghost, the dead returning amorphously or non-physically in some way, or physically in some way, but not bodily. It's not. Ghosts are different than zombies in that zombies come back to life, not necessarily with their own personalities, and ghosts come back not necessarily bodily. Right. The bodies come back in zombies, not necessarily with their own personalities. The personalities come back in ghosts, not necessarily not with their bodies. Possibly physically, but not with their bodies. Stephen King plays with this sometimes, these free-floating ghosts. Stephen King's ghosts are great, by the way, but most of them are anchored. I think they work better anchored. Sometimes they come back, I guess could be considered free-floating. No, I wouldn't say that. I would say it's anchored to the town. Yeah, no, I don't think any... They move about, but they don't move about much. I haven't read Bag of Bones. I was actually given it by my boss not too long ago. But she said it's essentially anchored around a pond or a lake. Duma-Key, anchored around the island of Duma-Key in Florida. And I used to live in Sarasota, so I sort of know the area that it's supposed to take place in. Not that Duma-Key exists as an actual island over there, but the island and the water around the island were part of the hauntingness. So, think bad ghosts, bad place. You'll see just free-floating ghosts, which I'm not going to say it again that it doesn't work for me. Obviously, it doesn't work for me. I'm going to scoop into the bad place archetype. These are the ones that King mentions. The Marston House from Salem's Lot. The Overlook Hotel, of course, from The Shining. The House Next Door by Anne Rivers Siddons. Hill House by Shirley Jackson in Haunting of Hill House. And The Bloody Bram in Ira Levin's Rosemary's Baby. The last one isn't a ghost story. It's how he transitions from bad place into monsters in general. Because this is, of course, in the fiction section in Stephen King. The Bad Place, he talks about his own works in The Bad Place. In 1980, those included pretty much the Marston House and Overlook Hotel. I don't know if sometimes they come back. I forget which collection that's in. So it could be in a collection that's out in 1980. I'm not sure. Actually, will it say in here? Skeleton Crew? Was it in Skeleton Crew? Oh, I should have this checked beforehand. But I just thought of sometimes they come back not too long ago. It was in this video when I thought of it, so I didn't have that option. Since then, he's did Bag of Bones, which I haven't read, so I can't talk about. He did Duma-Key, which I've read in an audiobook. It was exceptional in audiobook. It kept me up for about 3 nights. Not as good as Overlook Hotel, of course, which kept me up for about 7. Not consecutive, because I do pass out from lack of sleep, but, you know, between the book and the movie of The Shining, I was in for some sleepless nights. Marston House, which was the scary part of Salem's Lot, gave me a good 3 nights as well. Hubie Marston is the scary part of Salem's Lot for me, and it's exceptional. It's great stuff. The rest of the book works. I think, is not especially scary. But Marston's House scary, very good. Hubie as a ghost, if he is a ghost or not a hallucination, is tied to the Marston House, or a manifestation. I don't know what you'd call Hubie. Let's just leave it. Hubie's on his own scale, and it's only a backdrop to the rest of the book. Hey, I'd love to have a Hubie Marston story, but can't have everything. Where would you put it? As Stephen Wright likes to say. So, once he discusses the Marston House, which he briefly does, because it was semi-autobiographical. There was a Marston House in Gorham when he was growing up. Gorham? Almost. I live in Falmouth, so I'm not too far away from the Portland area, which is where Salem's Lot is supposed to be, nearby. So, and then we go on to the Overlook Hotel, which is in The Shining. If you haven't seen the movie, you should. If you haven't read the book, you should. I can't say which one to read first, and I will mention King's problem with The Shining as a movie. There's a few. It boils down to Jack Nicholson is the one that goes crazy. In the book, it is a slow process and you see it happen. And you don't expect it to happen. Jack Torrance, slow descent in madness. Jack Nicholson, golfer, yeah. I used to get that wrong so often when I was a kid. Jack Nicholson, no one has a problem with him going nuts. He goes nuts quite often. It's a short trip, driving him insane. It's a short trip. So there was it wasn't a stretch to see Jack Nicholson going crazy. It's a stretch to see Jack Torrance going crazy. But it happens. So that's the overlooks, the problem with Stephen King and The Shining movie. Most average moviegoers don't have a problem with The Shining as a movie. I would recommend watching The Shining first and reading the book second, because the book is better and you don't want to have the movie ruined. Yeah. And it's a great movie. So if it's a great movie and the book's better, it's a great book. Let's go over the Overlook. The Overlook is a hotel. So it's not a haunted house. That's why the archetype is called the bad place. The Overlook is a hotel where bad things happen to good people. And sort of a psychic video camera is what he conceived of it as and succeeds at. The hotel records the bad things that happen there and plays it back to unsuspecting, sensitive people. Or insensitive people, because Jack Torrance is as asensitive as you can get, according to... Oh, it's been so long. Jack Torrance is the opposite of The Shining. He's a dark spot. It's the cook, the black cook. It's gotta be. It's gotta be. But I don't remember. Apparently there's going to be a sequel to The Shining soon, with Danny Torrance growing up, and fighting other type people. Interesting concept. Not a ghost story, But as I said before, where Stephen King excels is his dark sci-fi or dark paranormal. Firestarter is one of my favorites. Carrie, The Shining, in that Danny Torrance has The Shining, has ESP abilities. That aspect of the book works exceptionally well as the ghost part of the book. But we're talking about the bad place. The Marston House is the Overlook is a bad place. The whole grounds, the topiary animals in the front, all the way around it. Or if you watch the movie only, the maze. I still like the topiary animals better, and the creepy tube. In the God, I'm not gonna sleep tonight, guys. Jeez. And the creepy tubes in the play area, the playground. I don't know if they were actually concrete. I remember from my childhood playground that we had huge concrete tubes that the kids could run inside. And of course, Stephen King ruins that for me, because now I just see the girls from... okay, alright. I'm going to freak myself out a lot this video, by the way. So, let's move away from what Stephen King said. Stephen King's own works. Let's go into the other ones. The House Next Door. This is Anne Rivers Siddons, who is... Stephen King says, this is the good one. The Haunting of Hill House is the great one. I've not read these. I don't have any really opinion on them. I'm just parroting what Stephen King says. I do like, there's a bit in here, what Anne Rivers Siddons says about the haunted house. The concept of the house next door was she wanted to make a haunted house that wasn't a old haunted house. She wanted to be haunted from the time it was built. She wanted to actually be a contemporary building, like a Frank Lloyd Wright, like modernist thing. A contemporary is what her term. So, the main characters, the heroes, the Kennedy family, it lives next door to the house next door. Funnily enough, I figured you could have got that from the title of the book. Excuse me. Anyway, so the house next door is being built. It was a wooded lot in a suburb, which they wanted a suburb, not just an abandoned house someplace. And you have it being built next door to them. The architect builds it, the first family moves in, bad stuff happens to them, they get haunted in a suburban mess-with-you kind of way. You don't see manifestations of dead beings, it's just bad stuff happens to them, and it's related to the house. Second family moves in. The first family, she loses the wife, young wife, loses her miscarries her child in the house. She loses her dog in the house. Then her dad dies, and she finds her husband in an affair at the same time. Or the dad finds the husband with an affair with another guy in the South, where such things are not accepted. Has a heart attack. The wife finds the husband and the other guy, and the dad dying at the same time, and that's how they end their series. The next family that moves in, the son died in Vietnam, and the wife's getting over it, and she keeps seeing on the television, the color TV, the replay of the son dying in Vietnam. Pretty creepy. And then the third family moves in, something else happens, I don't remember. I can't figure it out. Or I don't remember what details. I don't know how many details they give, because I don't think they give a lot of details. Now, Anne River Siddon's not a horror writer. She's a gothic, southern writer. I don't want to call her chick lit because it's not fair to call every female author chick lit, contemporary author. But a lot of chick lit readers read Anne River Siddons, put it that way. But she wanted to write a haunted house story because she likes haunted house stories. All of her favorite writers had at some point played with ghosts, or played with occult fiction, or played with haunted houses. And she wanted to do the what if. She says the what if game that writers do, and creative people in general know the what if game, and then that's a spark. She said, what if it's a new house? What if it's in a suburb, not in an old, dilapidated part? New house, contemporary, not moldering in a suburb, where ghosts of dead relatives would probably be just laughed at. So she wanted to do new series. So I actually have a nice, good quote by her, and I want to read it. I don't really like reading quotes on video. It makes me feel silly. However, and I disagree with some of this too, but it does illustrate the point. The haunted house has always spoken specially and directly to me as the emblem of particular horror. Maybe it's because, to a woman, her house is so much more than that. It is her kingdom, responsibility, comfort, total world to her. To most of us, anyway, which is the part I agree with, whether or not we are aware of it, is an extension of ourselves. It tolls an answer to one of the most basic chords mankind will ever hear. My shelter, my earth, my second skin, mine. So basic is it that the desecration of it, the corruption, as it were, by something alien takes on a peculiar and bone-deep horror and disgust. It is both frightening and violating, like a sly, terrible burglar. A house askew is one of the not rightest things in the world, and it is terrible out of all proportion to its actual visitant. This is where Stephen King says it's not the ghost when we're talking about the bad place. The ghost may be the horror there, but it's the werewolf, it's the inside horror, which I disagree with. I think it's more the ghost that's the inside horror, in the free roaming ghost, because it seems more that it's about the non-ghost. The main character non-ghost makes the story, makes the ghost, as it were. Even to extent in Heart-Shaped Box, it's more roundabout. The ghost isn't because of the main character Judas Coin. It's because of Judas Coin's relationship with Florida, which is the ghost's niece? Granddaughter? One of those two. So Judas Coin makes the ghost in a certain way. Yeah, a bit. It's roundabout, and I don't want to really stretch that too much. But the house next door, especially what she just said here, there's so much about the home. King even says it's a place where you take off your armor, where you're supposed to be safe. When you slide the bolt on your door at night, you think you're locking the bad stuff out. And if you're locking the bad stuff in with you, that's even worse. See, the thing is, I'm going to keep looking over my shoulder, because this stuff's freaking me out. You may not realize. Ghosts, man. Ghosts and bad place. It's just too much for me. Sorry. I still have 2 more to go for the bad place. It's fine. but I think it's more central. As Anne Richardson says, the place where you think you're safe. Or it's a hotel room where you're home away from home in Overlook Hotel or 1408, which is also King and also great. Also good movie. Or, your vacation home if it were, if it were the Bag of Bones, which I haven't read, so I may be wrong on that, but I sort of got the impression from what my boss was telling me. So, unfortunately, I have a synopsis of a synopsis. Or Duma McKee, which was second home, or it was where he was living, but he was a transplant. He wasn't, that attached to the place, and it wasn't the place that was bad, but it was the place that was haunted. There's a whole island that was haunted, which is a bad place. The ghost was transplantable, sort of, but it wasn't a ghost really either, was it? In the end, so it was a thing without a name. But the thing without a name wasn't as scary as the place, as its manifestations in the place where it had power. Like it was a thing without a name, and when it was playing ghost, it was really, really scary. When it was haunting the town, it was really, really scary. When it had control over a town, it was really, really scary. When it was actually just the spider-scorpion thing, or physical, when it was any physical, was when it was weak. When it was weakened by the band of intrepid heroes. But the town of Derry, where it was haunted, the whole town was under its spell. That's creepy. That's creeped out. So ghosts, that bad place. I think the bad place is so central, as Siddon says. And especially in the home. If it's the home, it's where you're taking off your armor. And as you said, it's mine. It is my second skin, the home. So when that's corrupted, when your second skin is corrupted, that is even worse. So I was trying to save my rant about the bad place or the ghost being the true tarot card to the end. It didn't last to the end. I still have two bad places to talk about. But that's my 2 cents for what it's worth, and it's probably not worth 2 cents. Let's go on to Hill House, which is from The Haunting of Hill House, which is Shirley Jackson. This is King's great story. And of course, again, I haven't read it because ghosts freak me out way too much. If I'm going to have a half sleepless night by this, just talking about this, man, I'm not going to read a ghost story. I'm just not going to do it. The ghost stories that I've read, besides this one I read, and it was okay with it more because it was traveling ghosts. And I read it because I wanted to see what Stephen King's son was like as a writer. It's exceptional. Also, Horns, not a ghost story. By far one of the most disturbing books I've ever read. I listened to it on audiobook because I found out cheap on audiobook. It was on sale. But it was by far the most disturbing. Some people say Crooked Little Vein by Warren Ellis. I think that Horns has it beat. It hit me harder anyway. It hit me harder in a lot of ways. And it's not even creepy. Sometimes it's just dramatic tension and loss and heartbreak. There is so much heartbreak in that book. It's horror heartbreak. Not a genre I recommend because it hurts me too much. Oh my God, just Ignatius and Marion Williams, Ig and Marion Williams. They're the Romeo and Juliet of modern times. I can't think of a better, more tragic love story. It is more tragic than Romeo and Juliet. and they're a better couple than Romeo and Juliet. Can you believe that? Yes, you should. And if you don't believe me, read the book. Maybe you won't agree, but you're wrong because it's true. Whatever. He also has 20th Century Ghosts. I listened to some of it. It freaked me out too much, so I stopped. I was listening to it with an X. I only listened to the first CD of the first book, of the first story, because it's short stories. And it was creepy. Too much. Ghosts freak me out too much. I know ghosts freak me out, so I do tend to avoid them. So, you may say to yourself, how do you know? Well, because they freak me out. If ghosts are freaking you out so much, why are you the person to talk about it? Well, because ghosts freak me out so much. It's because ghosts freak me out so much that I am the expert in it. This is what freaks me out more. Oh my god, I still haven't talked about Hill House, have I? Oh yeah, Hill House. I haven't read Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House. Synopsis is, people going to Hill House. Eleanor, how much detail do I want to go into it? I've already talked for about 40 minutes. It's a haunted house story. It is. I already talked about it in the Fantastic because it is a fantastic story. You don't know at the end whether Eleanor, the main character, is seeing ghosts or experiencing ghosts, or is she just going nuts. So it is a fantastic haunted house story. You don't know if it is a haunted house. You don't know if Eleanor is the one who wrote on the wall, or the ghost wrote the stuff on the wall. You can't tell. This is also turns into a haunting in movie form. The original black and white way back in the day one, or the Catherine Zeta-Jones one, which wasn't that great. It freaked me out because it was great CGI stuff, and it wasn't true to the book in any way, shape, or form, because it was CGI. Everybody knew it was haunted. There's no fantastic element in that it was haunted. There was ghosts. The curtains blew and faces came out of the curtains, and out of the woodwork came children's faces. That stuff freaks me the hell out. Oh my god. Oh my god, it really does. The ghost itself wasn't that bad. It's just a big, stompy, smoky ghost. No big freaking deal. Made fun of quite well in Scary Movie 2. It was about as frightening in Scary Movie 2 as it was in Scary Movie 1. I own Scary Movie 2. I own the Scary Movies. But the ghost's manifestations was frightening in the movie. Anyway, it's loosely based. The characters' names are the same. And the house name is the same. Sort of. Is it? Oh, I don't even remember. Characters' names are the same. The plot's different, sort of. So, Hill House is a fantastic. We're not sure if it's really haunted or if it's not. Bad stuff happens in Hill House, and then whoever buys it ends up leaving it quickly because it's a bad place. Then transitions from that into the rest of his fiction, because he's going to talk about fiction for now, after this. But he talks about Rosemary's Baby, the Bramfield? I think it's actually called the Bramfield or something. But it's called the Bloody Bram by one of the main characters. Let's see. Take a look here. House Next Door. Blah, blah, blah. Rosemary's Baby. I don't think it even says in Stephen King's book. I thought I owned it, but I don't. The book. I own the movie. The Bram is in a condo, apartment building. High end. The character, Rosemary, and her husband get a apartment there. They're like really excited because it's, hey, George Harrison, I think, had an apartment there or something. It's crazy. Hey. But then one of Rosemary's friends, local historian, it takes place in New York. It's very urban horror, which is a great urban horror, daylight horror, and urban horror. IR-11. I did mention IR-11? Yeah, I think I did. And the sequel, The Child of Rosemary, Son of Rosemary, by far the worst book I've ever read. I finished it. I threw it across the room. It is awful. Oh my god, it is really bad. Please don't read it. If you want a really bad book that will really make you angry, read it. Otherwise, don't. It's bad. I don't know what he was thinking. There's some parts of it that I guess were okay. In social commentary terms, it is awful. Oh my god, so bad. I'll tell you what, it ends. I'll tell you how it ends. It ends with Rosemary waking up before the baby's born. It ends with it all being a dream. The Dallas ending. It's so awful. I read that, I was like, oh my freaking god, are you kidding me? No. Don't read it. But the first one was good. I'll give props to the first one, and I give props to Polanski for the movie of the first one. No one's going to make a movie of the second one. I hope. So, sorry, I got that off my chest too. My apologies, I'm going off tangents. The Bram. Bad stuff happens in the Bram. Rosemary meets the neighbors. The neighbors are Satanists. You don't know that now. You find that out later. And they convince Guy. Would it be Guy? I think it's Guy in the movie, so I'm just going to go with that. Guy to sort of join up for his career because he's an actor. And Guy sells Rosemary out to Satan. So on a boat, Rosemary is drugged, so she doesn't really know what's going on, and is raped by Satan, thinking that it's Guy, sort of. And then Guy and the Satanist managed to convince her that other stuff, it didn't happen that way. It was just Guy, hey, you drank too much, you weren't drugged. But, stuff goes on. The obstetrician that she likes is replaced by one of the Satanists, who, of course, is a much more well-regarded obstetrician. Obstetrician. I get the ob and the jinn mixed up sometimes, so I had to double check in my head. I'm rambling tonight. Sorry, folks. Almost done with my water too. Wow, that is long series, long session tonight. 45 minutes already. So, the Bloody Bram is where the Satanists hang out. It's actually where the Satanist heads, the leader of the Satanists, Satanist father or grandfather, I don't remember, it's been a while since I've read the book, built it. The Bram is named after, with IR-11, but for Bram Stoker. I think they call it the Bramford or the Bramfield or something in the book, but it's got a bloody history that Rosemary's buddy, who's also killed later on, points out to her. So it's also a bad place. It's not a ghostly or haunted bad place, but it is a bad place. It is a place where she should feel safe, but isn't safe. She feels safe there for a bit, but So that is the ghost card, or the bad place archetype. I think it should be the bad place card with the ghost archetype myself, as I've said several times. Unanchored ghosts don't work as well. My ghost story, which was also a fantastic story, was Jim. You can have a haunted anything. Haunted hotel rooms, haunted hotel, haunted gym, haunted lake, haunted island, haunted new house, haunted old house. You can have ghosts that wander around. Ghost story, the ghost takes a road trip with the main character, but then you're not sure if the main character is the ghost, because ghosts get confusing when you don't have them anchored. This one, there was an anchor. They destroyed the anchor, symbolically or in actuality, so the ghost became freeform. It works because it twists your mind. It's kind of Deus Ex Machina. A few things in this book are Deus Ex Machina. They seem a little bit too convenient in the writing style. The dogs, sort of. It's a Deus Ex Machina that's sort of feels like it's written in earlier, which is an interesting writing technique. If you're going to have a gimmick that solves the plot, make sure your gimmick is introduced very early on in the story. I don't want to give the wrong impression about Joe Hill. It really is a great book. You really should read it. If for no other reason that to check out a free-floating ghost story, and then read Ghost Story itself, Peter Straub's Ghost Story, or Julia, where the place itself really doesn't matter to the ghost. The ghost is following the person. So I guess you could even say the person is the anchor, which doesn't work as well either, for another reason. Because the person itself is the anchor, or the person itself is the ghost in Ghost Story, and that hurts my head. I probably should have read this before making this video, but it would just freak me out and I wouldn't sleep for a while, so I'm not going to do that. Sorry, folks. So I'm going to turn it off here. I'm sure you've noticed this. I'm sure you probably aren't even aware that this is the first video I'm doing with this. We're ending the horror tale today. The next section in our horror analysis section, which I have a slide for, is History of Horror. And you know what? I'm not ready for History of Horror yet. So this is my first video with this. I'm going to go back and redo all the old videos that I made already, 1 through 15, with this, or 1 through a few, until I'm ready for the History of Horror, and then I'm going to do the History of Horror and go on from there, once again with the good microphone, because I was on the generic laptop mic that came with my laptop, and it isn't good. I sound very tinny. I sound much better with this. I'm glad I picked it up for $25. I didn't really want to use it because I didn't want this in the camera shot, but you know, I'm okay with it. It's fine. It's a lot better than the old version. So you'll be used to this by now, because you'll see 1 through 15 with this. But for me, it's weird, and it'll get better. So you'll see me again once I'm ready for this. Once I'm ready for the History of Horror, and then we'll go over the different types of horror. I did find some anthropology, sociology of horror in this. In fact, in talking about Peter Straub, because Peter Straub is half English in his storytelling style and half American in his storytelling style. So I'm going to have that to talk about in the sociology of horror section as well as Oh, another haunted house book, which was House of Leaves, which wasn't necessarily a ghost either, but it was definitely a bad place if it existed. That's the that's the thing about the House of Leaves, or the what was it called? House on something way. House on, or did it? Whatever. It doesn't matter. The Davidson house, I guess you could call it, from the Davidson record. The house that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. That's the gimmick on. I call them gimmicks. That's what's really creepy about the House of Leaves. That book, that gave me about 8, 9 sleepless nights. That's up there, and one of the most disturbing books visually I've ever read. So between that and Horns, you have two of the most disturbing books I've ever read in one sitting. House of Leaves, by far the weirdest book I've ever read, as far as reading a book goes. Plot-wise, I think it might go to Horns. So that's 2 books that I've discussed today that are the weirdest books I've ever read. And we're going to be under an hour. I can't go over an hour on this, so I'm going to shut it off now, folks. We've finished the horror tale. Next time, with me, we'll go into history of horror. That's next time you'll see me. The real next time, chronologically, is I'm going back and doing all of my videos over again. So this is Horror Analysis. Have a great night, folks. See you next time.